Meanwhile, the White House has revealed U.S. President Joe Biden will speak with Chinese President Xi Jinping on Friday for the first known discussion in months. The announcement from White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki comes days after a U.S. diplomatic cable suggested that China has expressed some openness to providing Russia with requested military and financial assistance as part of its war on Ukraine. It's not clear yet whether China intends to provide Russia with the assistance. U.S. officials familiar with the intelligence told newsmen this week. Now let's talk this through by looking at the latest by speaking with the global affairs analyst Ejike Okpa, who is joining me via Zoom from Texas. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Okpa. This talk between President Biden and Xi is coming amid warnings from Washington that China may be considering providing military support to Russia. What do you think would be the outcome of this talk?
Well, thank you for having me on the show. I don't know what the outcome would be, but you could see how, Russia is trying to drag China into it, and then that might escalate the war. I think, the conversation between Biden and the Chinese president, should be fruitful to end this escalation so that it doesn't go any bigger than it is. It's a proxy thing now that is going on, because if China does that, then, Putin is going to feel emboldened, and then this war is going to turn into something that nobody will like.
As a matter of fact, Beijing has made it clear that it intends to preserve its friendship with Russia, which it has called limitless and rock solid. And with that fact, that China also on its state media used the term such as Russia uses by referring to the war as a special military operation. What do you think China really stands on Russia's invasion of Ukraine?
Well, recently China and Russia have been, cozying up to each other and forming that relationship because, their whole motive is to see how to minimize American influence in the world. You can see what China is already doing in Africa, and then now they want to bring in China because Russia, because Russia and U.S. somehow, government to government, they don't like each other. So again, it's now becoming a tripartite kind of situation, U.S., China, Russia. And I'm just hoping that, Ukraine and Russia come to terms because they are neighbors. Love thy neighbor is as common as anything. We don't need the whole world, don't need to be into these two countries' situation, drama and theatrics. It's not going to benefit anybody. But then, because when one thing happens in some part of the world, it becomes a global issue, especially if it's something to do with white people. Because if it's something going on in Africa, this sort of attention is not given to it. And so I'm just hoping that, the humane aspect of things begin to be part of diplomacy so we don't have to have war. We are no longer in those centuries where one individual can drag everybody into an unnecessary conflict.
Well, those some other people have it, differently. Their thought is quite different from what some people term Europhobia, saying the U.S. and the NATO, they are looking forward to expanding the NATO, allies. But do you think the U.S. is also engaging in something of a diplomatic offensive to try to call out and even to shame China for its somewhat, neutral silence over the Ukraine invasion?
Well, I think the NATO alliance and membership, I don't think, Ukraine is going to join NATO anytime soon because, again, it's one of those excuse me, one of those things that proximity is love. I don't think the U.S. would love a regime that is not friendly to it to be in Canada or to be in Mexico. I don't think U.S. will allow that. So we should not encourage something like that for Russia. I'm not saying that Russia has the right to invade, but I'm just saying that Ukraine and Russia, they are next to each other, and nobody should present the idea of a threat or being an enemy to the other. So NATO, that's why NATO is handicapped. They can authorize a no-fly zone because once they do it, they're automatically saying, hey, Ukraine, who's not a member nation, we're going to be affected.
Well, since you stated at the beginning of this conversation that you're not sure what the outcome of the talk would be like, but following the call, this call that will be made, or maybe it's going on, will it make China walk away from its ambitious goal of boosting its already deep economic ties with Russia at the end of the day?
No, it's not gonna. No, it's not gonna make them walk away. They're just gonna, do this where let's wait and see what's gonna happen. They're just gonna sit on the fence. But remember, China has this ulterior motive to seek ways to undermine U.S. credibility anywhere they can. And so who knows? They may be doing some other things, that's not publicly known. But Putin sees a strong ally in China, and China somehow would like to provide that support, even though it's not going to do it publicly. But I'm hoping that the conversation between the two presidents is going to end, lead to something that ends this escalation. Again, we don't need it, we don't want it. It's unfortunate it has happened, but we have to deal with it. 4 or 5 years ago, 4 years ago, or some years ago, this thing wouldn't have happened. But then that's what is happening now because of the leadership we have. Putin sees that Joe Biden has been weak, and he's taking advantage of it. Anybody who sees somebody they can beat up on always wish for a war. Because under Trump, this wouldn't have happened. Many people, the polls have showed that if Trump was president, Russia wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, very quickly before I let you go, we are studying how this war is unfolding in Ukraine, the onslaught of Russia on Ukraine. Recently, we've got, a bombing of military place close to Polish border, and then it's something that the NATO has always warned Russia to be careful in prosecuting this war. Are you concerned that these might, at the end of the day, generate, lead into a world war? Something that will draw NATO into this war at the end, of it all?
Well, again, it's one of those war games they do. So, Poland is part of NATO. So if Russia, either by strategic miscalculation or whatever reason, goes over there and begin to attack a NATO nation, then all of a sudden it becomes what you have said, a third world war, because now NATO will respond and Poland will respond. So they again, it's just back and forth trying to see who else can we, draw into this conflict, and it's very, very unfortunate, but we have to watch it because we don't need another third, world war. Because of ego of anybody who is president of any nation.
Well, the world is watching, you're watching, we're all watching to see how all of what will come out, of the talks between Biden and Xi. Global Affairs Analyst Geopolitical, thank you so much for our insight on this.
Well, thank you for having me, and you guys are doing a great job. Just keep the conversation going.
Thank you very kindly.